talk about that a lot. And, how do you determine what's most important? And we kind of have a little bit of a list, right? But when you only have a moment to gather what you feel is most important for the moment, right? Or what's most important, that's where the test comes in. Right?
Yeah. What are you going to take?
And when those things happen, when they're always talking about Santa Ana wind warnings, there's always a lookout for fires. And so, we're thinking fires, but usually it's up in the mountains. Mm-hmm. But this time I didn't realize, but that next morning, woke up, went outside, took the dog for a walk, and see trees and branches and stuff just all over the place. I mean, it was like almost felt like a war zone. Mm-hmm. Just stuff all over the place.
And it's very, very unusual to have Santa Anas in January. I don't remember ever having them.
And it was worse than I've ever experienced it, where, pretty big, like I said, big flakes were coming down, and it was, definitely I can tell it's kind of starting to breathe some of that in, and it was getting in my eyes. Obviously, the walk didn't last very long. Kind of walked inside, and I was like, oh my gosh. Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
Hello, Thriving in Tandem.
Hi, Tandem family.
Hey, thanks and welcome back. We took a little bit of a break over the holidays, and now we're back. And boy, this year is starting out
like gangbusters
and crazy. And so today we really want to talk about a guaranteed way to know what's most important in life. And, we talk about this a lot. The premise of the show is about, how do you thrive? How do you make sure you prioritize your relationship, your marriage, your family as you're building this business? And, we talk about what's most important is really our relationships. At the end of the day, really, it's relationships. And so we talk about that a lot, but I think in this episode, we're going to get a little bit more raw, because by the time this airs, we're probably a month or two out from the big mega, like probably largest wildfires we've ever seen in Southern California, at least since I've lived here for 22 years. And you probably saw it in the news. I know it was national news. Malibu was burning, Pacific Palisades, which is a very high-end, ritzy area where a lot of movie stars and celebrities live. And of course, it was actually not just one fire, but it's really multiple fires going on at the same time. And even one right here in our backyard in Pasadena that took out about 7,000 homes and buildings and other structures.
And businesses.
Yeah. And so, we even escaped a little bit. It was just one of those things where you had a moment to really decide what's most important. We would talk about that a lot, and how do you determine what's most important? And we kind of have a little bit of a list, right? But when you only have a moment to gather what you feel is most important for the moment, right? Or what's most important, that's where the test comes in. Right?
Yeah. What are you going to take?
Yeah. You don't have time to take much.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's some, we were fortunate, our home is still standing, but when, Wednesday morning, first Tuesday night, the night before.
I just want to back up. And our heart really goes out to all the people that lost homes, lost animals, pets, loved ones, are displaced. It's really disheartening.
Yeah.
The destruction.
And, so it all kind of started a little bit Tuesday night. It was, the winds were really howling. It was basically hurricane force winds up to 94 miles an hour. We're watching and listening to the wind outside. And the windows are rattling. The trees are just whipping away. We're watching TV and just looking out the window, and the winds are the trees, big trees, probably 50, 40. Yeah, some of them are probably 50 feet, looking outside our window, not directly out in front of our place, but across the street. And, they're just whipping around. And I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, I remember you looked out and you said, oh my gosh, a big, huge oak tree fell on a car that was not parked. We think maybe somebody was in it. Hopefully they got out okay. But it just fell on top of it. And then the tree went almost across the whole street.
Yeah. The oak, even 3 houses past that, was even bigger. And that tree did cross the street. It covered the whole street. You couldn't drive. And then there's another oak that was even bigger, but it felt more in a diagonal way. So it didn't quite block the whole street, but it blocked a big chunk of the street. But anyways,
couldn't get a car through.
It was, the winds were howling. And of course, the immediate thought is like fires, because we're experiencing what's called Santa Ana winds. And so for those of you who don't know, Santa Ana winds we call them Santa Ana winds, but they're basically winds that come off the east to west, and basically from the desert out towards the LA area. And so they're dry, hot winds. And when those things happen, when they're always talking about Santa Ana wind warnings, there's always a lookout for fires. And so, we're thinking fires, but usually it's up in the mountains. But this time I didn't realize, but that next morning, woke up, went outside, took the dog for a walk, and see trees and branches and stuff just all over the place. I mean, it was like almost felt like a war zone, but just stuff all over the place.
And it's very, very unusual to have Santa Anas in January. I don't remember ever having them in January.
And so, and then it was smoky. I mean, it smelled like a barbecue. I mean, even inside our place.
You say barbecue, I say a fire pit.
Well, yeah.
Barbecue is just gas, and so I think that is...
There is wood barbecue.
Yeah, that's true.
Your dad barbecues with oak.
Yeah, well, I think like a campfire, you know what I mean? When smoke is blowing in your face and the ash, and you're like...
Yeah. That's what you burn oak. It smelled like a barbecue. That's, for me, it was a barbecue because you barbecue with oak a lot of times, like the good barbecues, right? You barbecue oak. And of course, there was trees on fire. And so, anyways, we digress.
Well, no, because I thought you meant like a barbecue and grill, like a gas one. And I'm like, oh, those usually smell good because of the food. Well, not ashes, hopefully. But anyways.
So, but walk outside, it's really smoky and then ashy, and it's basically raining ash. So if you're
big pieces,
if you're if you've ever been at a fireplace or a campfire, and sometimes ash comes up, well, that's basically what was raining down. And I mean, and it was worse than I've ever experienced it. Where I mean, pretty big, like I said, big flakes were coming down, and it was definitely I can tell it's kind of starting to breathe some of that in. And it was getting in my eyes. Obviously, the walk didn't last very long. Kind of walked inside, and I was like, oh my gosh, my clothes are smelling. And that's when Kaylee was like, oh, maybe we should leave for a couple of days. Because
I have breathing issues. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to get triggered. And I don't know. When you have breathing issues, if you have challenges, sometimes it's in the middle of the night. And that's the last thing you want to be doing is trying to go to urgent care to be able to breathe.
And so it was interesting at that moment. I thought it was the fires from Pacific Palisades, which is, probably about 20 or so miles away from us to the west towards the ocean. But I know that we've had big fires like that are far away, but because the wind, just everything travels, that it wasn't that unusual to experience that kind of ash and stuff even that far away from the fires. But what I didn't realize was that we had the fires right in our backyard in the foothills right there north of Pasadena. So, and then it was actually when when I was talking, I ran into a neighbor outside, and he said, yeah, I got a fire evacuation warning on my phone.
Yeah, it was an immediate neighbor right next door.
Yeah, I was like, really? We didn't get one. And then they're like, what's going on? It's like, oh yeah, there's fires, and they said Altadena, which is just north of us. I'm like, oh. And so, Kaylee's saying, oh, we should leave. Smoke is really bad and it's affecting my breathing. Maybe we should leave for a day or two. So I said,
the inside that was really bad, our condo.
Yeah. And so I said, okay, well, let me, we're going to be on someone's podcast. We're going to get interviewed. So I said, well, after the interview, then I'll look for some places. Well, almost just as I'm saying that, the fire alarm to our condo building rings, not in our unit, but the whole building.
It's blaring loudly.
And so I'm thinking normally, well, every other time before this, it's been a false alarm. And so I'm like, okay, probably another false alarm. So, we do always go outside, just in case, but, you kind of not take your time, but you're not in a hurry or you're not in a big rush. But when the fire alarm was ringing this time, my immediate thought was another false alarm, but knowing that the fires were relatively close. And I'm thinking, and the winds are so strong that I know it could really carry or really push fires pretty fast. I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not, just in the back of my mind. I didn't think our place was on fire, our building was on fire, but at the same time, I was like,
we're hoping it wasn't.
It could happen, right? So there was a sense of anxiety. I did what I never did before, and when the fire alarm rings in our building, was I got my backpack, packed the laptop, and my 2 hard drives. Our portable drives are the size of my wallet, basically a little bit bigger than a wallet. And years ago, I decided not to put anything on the desktop hard drive, but to have these portable drives that still have 3 terabytes of memory and in it. So they're significant. but they're nice and portable. So like if I travel, I just take it with me sometimes if we're traveling for an extended period of time in case I need something. Important documents, of course, our photos and stuff are on that. There was also thinking of if it's an emergency, I can just take it and go. so here we are. It was a test, right? I was like, okay. So, took the drives, packed the laptop, and went in the closet, got my wallet, both sets of keys. And then you had gathered the dog.
The dog, I got my purse because I don't want to have to get a new driver's license. Of all things to have to get that is not one you want to do. So I grabbed that and the dog and leash and purse, and out the door I went.
Yeah. And so we were hoping it was a false alarm, but just in the back of my mind, we're still so.
Because I thought maybe it was the smoke from the fires that turned on the alarm.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, because the smoke was so thick. Walking the condo hallway, and it was, you can just really smell it. It was even thicker than in our unit. So we could walk downstairs to the parking lot area where other people are gathering. And then for whatever reason, I'm thinking maybe I should move our cars or think about moving the cars. And so,
because we have underground, we're on the 3rd story and we have underground parking.
Yeah. So the door to the garage was open. So I walk in there and then I just look in and I just see water gushing out of the water pipe overhead. And I see the garbage truck. So we have these big garbage bins. So a garbage, a little, like a pickup sized truck has to come in with these forks, like a forklift, and lift the garbage bin out. So then the big garbage truck can empty it. And so, anyways, what happened? So as soon as I saw that, I said, okay, this happened before, where the driver didn't bring the forks all the way down, gets in the garage, and a fork hits a water pipe, and bam. And so there we go, water going all over it, and it's kind of basically almost right in front of our parking stall. And so I'm like, great. And so,
well, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is the last thing the fire department needs to do is come out here and shut off our alarm, because they have more important things. We're so stretched with firemen as it is, having enough people. So it was just blaring for quite a while. Yeah, and water spraying everywhere. You go in and get the cars, get them out, and I go across the street with the dog. And
yeah, so at that moment, we decided, I had the car key, so let's move the cars out. One, just because otherwise I wasn't sure how long this was going to last, and was the garage going to get flooded out? I don't know. But anyways, we moved our cars outside, and then as I parked, I said, well, I guess we might also leave, honey. Because you said you wanted to leave, and maybe this is a sign. And so knowing that, our unit wasn't in danger, we got inside, packed a few things for
quickly.
A couple days.
We didn't take much at all.
No, just a couple days of clothes, and that's
dog
food. Yeah, and then that's about it. And then just got out of there. And so, we're fortunate that our place wasn't in danger. But as Kaylee was saying earlier, we do know a lot of friends that did lose their homes or are evacuated and can't come back because basically they've treated the whole area as like a crime scene, because they're still discovering bodies, unfortunately.
And they don't want looting and all that.
There's looting going on. Yeah. So, it's all, that whole area is taped off, and you can't get in or out unless there's special priority or special admission or whatever. And then there's, we have a client that has a business kind of in that area too. And the business is still standing, but there's no utilities. Gas lines got damaged. Waters, they're talking about potentially been, what do we call it? Contaminated. Yeah. And of course, electrical, there's those issues. And so
they've been shut down.
So they've been shut down as a business. And so, definitely there's a lot of people that we know personally that have been affected. And, I remember when we saw Marcia at church on Sunday, that first Sunday, you were saying she was just kind of in a daze.
Yeah. My heart just went out to her, because she's like, I just don't know what to do. I'm so overwhelmed. And she was like almost paralyzed.
Yeah.
And I said, do you have somebody that's going to help you? She's like, yeah, I got somebody that's going to help me with the GoFundMe page and some other stuff. I said, okay, now is not a time to not ask for help, I told her, because people want to help. We just don't know what to do. And she, frankly, when you've gone through something like this, you don't know what to do either when you lose your home.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Yeah, because you probably have never lost a
home
before. Yeah, you've never lost a home before. You've never lost everything. What we're talking about is, we had a moment to gather things. We didn't know to what extent, but I kind of knew we had some time, regardless, even if our place did catch fire, a big building. if you've seen the news where people just had to literally just leave with whatever they're wearing and take off. I mean, they couldn't stop to
Just
gather
with
anything.
whatever's on their back. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like I said, we're blessed, we're fortunate, but we know so many people that have lost everything. And so when you go through not just go through these moments, but when you're faced with that moment, that's when what's most important comes out. So from just leaving with your life and your family and we could gather a few things. So just basically some clothes and laptop and hard drive, because it had some important stuff in it that everything else can get replaced, except for personal effects that are memory based, whether it's picture frames and awards, different things that are unique to you that you can't just go out and buy.
But the good thing is you still have the memory in your mind.
Yeah.
You might not have the physical picture or awards, but we still have the memories. So that can never be taken from us.
For sure. But, when you go from just us, whatever we're wearing, and us, that's most important, right? When you don't have any time, it's just us. And then it is, okay, a few pairs of clothes and then get some dog food and get your hard drive. So it's important effects and documents and get out of there, right? But you can't sit there and go through our files, and you can't say, oh, I'll take this, I'll take that. Even I'm thinking some, jewelry too. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Besides what I was wearing. I mean, I really didn't even need dog food because you can always buy that somewhere.
Yeah. There's extreme to not quite as extreme as us, but still, because as we're packing, the fire alarm's still blaring. So there's
it blared, I think, for a long time. The fire alarm, they had to call the alarm people to shut it off. And then they shut off water for the whole complex all day to get it fixed.
So that was the other reason why I figured we needed to leave, because I knew the water was going to be shut off for the day at least. And so, determining what to take, and, when you have a moment, right, just even hearing what we've been through, just let's just say you have a few minutes to gather, what do you take? What's most important? And then all of a sudden, the other stuff's not as important. And go ahead.
Yeah, because some of it's just stuff.
Yeah.
When you look around, like our place, we have so much stuff. I'd like to be a minimalist, but I don't think that being realistic is going to happen. But we have so much stuff. And if I lost some of this stuff, I mean, I don't want to fire or anything like that, but I would like to have less stuff to take care of and maintain and, take up space in my head.
Yeah. And, so why it's interesting when you start to reflect back, and it's like, why is the other stuff, like, we know what's most important when we left, but then why do we hold so tight and so dearly to other things, when in the moment that's not what we're thinking about in our business, right? I mean, we were going to get on a podcast interview. Of course, we had to cancel that. We weren't trying to figure out how to get on the interview.
Oh yeah, there's no way with the blaring.
Technically, I guess we could have gone on the phone, but you're just, business, all that stuff just doesn't matter anymore. You're just getting out, and
you just want your safety and your family.
Yeah, and so when you reflect back, you're thinking, why do we hold so dearly to things that at the end of the day it really doesn't matter? And it's almost like, whether it's our TV, our favorite couch, different things, right? Even like the NFL package, whatever subscription I have, and whether it's jewelry, my watches, what other things, my coffee maker, and then of course our business and all those things, and we hold so tightly to so many things that at the end of the day it doesn't really matter. And sometimes we get in arguments about whether we get rid of something or not, right? Because Kaylee's always wanted me to get rid of certain things, and I don't. And so we get in arguments about that. And it's like, at the end there, those things really don't matter. But yet we hold so tightly to those things. And so I think this is, I guess, a good time for you, because we've already done some reflection, but I think we still have some reflection to do, because we're still kind of in the midst of this, because even though, again, our place isn't directly affected, but we have friends and family and clients that are. And so we're also in that process of trying to figure out how to help them, because this is a long haul. Hopefully and I'm going to put a link in the show notes to where you can contribute, because you might be thinking, oh, it's a month or two later, and there's so many people that help. And it's true. Everybody's helping right now. I mean, even the donation places, Salvation Armies, all that kind of stuff, they're flooded with stuff and they can't take any more stuff. They're overloaded.
They need to just be able to have a better distribution system.
Yeah.
Because they have so much. Everybody wants to help and give.
Yeah. But then there's after the first month, that kind of momentum or that enthusiasm to help out kind of starts to wane. And the long term, these people are facing some years out, because this, the pictures you see on TV are absolutely true. Whole communities and neighborhoods just wiped out. So which means it's not, I mean, think about it, like trying to get permits to do a remodel in your house. How long does that take between permits and getting a contractor, getting supplies, and trying to multiply that by 7,000 buildings, trying to all do this at once, which is obviously not going to happen at once. But there's also city planning that gets involved. I mean, there's so many things.
Insurance.
Yeah. And there's so many things. So all that to say is there's a long-term effect to this thing. And even like the Maui fires, I'm from Hawaii, and we're there in Maui back in November, and it just leveled.
And it's been over a year.
It's been over a year. It was October of 23 was when those fires happened, and there's still really no rebuild. There's a few,
it looks like they
few homes here and there,
much.
but overall, it's just still flat.
Maybe those didn't get burnt with the fire, the homes that are there.
And I'm talking about the ones, we saw some stuff being rebuilt.
Oh,
right? We saw some new construction. And so there's a few here and there, but basically the whole town is still leveled. So that they're a little over a year out. So I can't imagine, I mean, the effect of these fires, because it wasn't just the Pasadena area, but it was the Palisades and Malibu. I mean, as far as structure is concerned, I mean, it's a lot more than even Lahaina.
Yeah.
Because we're talking multiple cities. So I can't imagine how long this is going to take. And there's just the long-term grief and just the challenge of trying to pick up and rebuild and all that kind of stuff.
Find a new place to live. Where are you going to live? And that went through my mind too. Like, if we needed a place to live, like, where would we go?
Yeah, I told you my cousin Cal. If he's and he listens.
Oh, he does.
So Calvin, if you're listening to this episode,
coming to your house.
Since they're empty nesters now, so we can we can go there. But I mean, we're fortunate. Even we're at the hotel down in the San Diego area. That's where we escaped to, basically, where half the hotel was also from people escaping as well. A sad thing to say, but we're sitting there and we're kind of sitting up in the pool area, on the rooftop pool, and we're like, man, we're blessed that we're able to do this.
Yeah, we're up there working, thinking,
working a little bit, but just relaxing. We're blessed that we're able to do this, and there's so many people that I know couldn't. And so all that to say is, if you're looking to give, I mean, there'll be a link in the show notes. It's actually to our church, who's working with other organizations, other churches locally to support the community. And this is a long-term deal. And so going back to what I was saying earlier, was like, we're still processing, how do we help these people that we know, clients, and how do we help them? I mean, for the long term, what are they going to be needing for the long term, and how can we be part of the solution, so to speak? And so, anyways, we're kind of just processing that too. So for you is to think about, or start talking about it between you and your spouse and the kids, like what's most important. How do we make sure we start to reprioritize our life to reflect what's important? And as you can guess, right, it's our relationships, it's each other, our own personal life, as well as the lives of our family. And at the end of the day, even when you just escape with just your clothes, at least you have each other.
Yes.
And that should give you hope and confidence and comfort that you can move forward. Because it's not going to be easy, but at the same time, you have each other, and that's what you do. Don't wait for disaster to come together and go forward, but do that now, because one is you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no one knows how long we have here.
Yeah. And so certainly I didn't think the fires, I mean, every year we got big fires, but it's never come into town like this. And like I said, we're about 3 miles from the southern edge of the fire zone. So I never thought it would ever get this close. And so, you start thinking about, okay, what if? And, you may be in a different area of the country. So maybe it's tornadoes or hurricanes or winter storms, blizzards, ice storms, whatever, right? I think every place in the country and the world has its own form of natural disasters that could happen. And so not so much just about preparing for that, but about just really thinking about what's most important and how do we make sure we prioritize our life to reflect that. I guess that's the gist of this episode is, how to make sure you don't hold so tightly the things that we say are important, but aren't really. It's not a priority. It's not that we can't have these things, or it's not that you don't purchase or you're business is important. It's not that. It's just about make sure things in the business aren't overriding basically what's important, which is ultimately your relationships.
Well, and you see this a lot with people like more mature people. They got a whole house full, stocked to the rafters of everything that they ever owned. And then unfortunately they pass away, and then someone's got to go through all that stuff. And you might love all your stuff, but nobody else wants to go through your stuff, and they're just going to get rid of everything pretty much.
Yeah. So I know this was more of a, I guess, mellow, or what do you call it? More of a somber episode, I guess. But we also thought it would be good to take the moment to reflect, because you've heard the news, we kind of experience it in a lot of levels, but to kind of frame it. And so to think, okay, maybe you've already had these conversations at home, but to frame and say, okay, what's most important? How do I prioritize while we're still building a successful business, but how to make sure we prioritize our family, our relationship, our health over everything else? Because at the end of the day, that's all you're going to have, right? So thank you for listening. And if this meant anything, please share this with another married entrepreneur that could use this. And we would love for a review.
Yes, we would be so excited, you guys. And that would mean so much to us because you are so important.
Yeah. And we're looking forward to another great season of Thriving in Tandem. God bless everyone. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.